Okay, so I decided probably which to look at the introduction itself, and then afterwards we can look at the specifics, okay, that you need, okay.
Mhm.
But trying to understand the research as a methodology, as actually we call it, okay. Right. Okay. So research and research methods. Okay. So research methods are split broadly into quantitative and qualitative methods. Yeah. Okay. So we are talking of methods here. Okay. But also quantitative and qualitative can stand for data. So you have qualitative data, you have quantitative data. Okay. Why is it important to differentiate them? Because each one of them requires a different methods. All right. So how to conduct them is going to be different. So
Mhm.
that is the type of data you collect, the type of methods you use to collect data is going to be different, but also the methods of analyzing data is going to be different. More importantly, the way you design, the design is how you organize the whole research, how you're going to go about conducting the whole research. That's the design. So the designs are going to be different. Okay. Therefore, because they're going to be different, then always we need to justify why we are using that methodology, why we are using that design, why we are using that particular research.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, right. So which one you are going to choose will depend on the first, what are the research questions you want actually to investigate about? Okay. The second, what is the underlying philosophy of your research, which is the theory behind your research?
Mhm.
And more importantly, what you prefer yourself. So what is your preference, but also what sort of skills and competencies you already have.
Mhm.
Some of these methodologies, they are much more difficult than the others. Okay. Yeah. So depending what is it actually you are preferring, and also what skills you already have. Mhm. Right. So all these they need to come into a decisions process as you're trying to design your research. Okay. So as I said, designing is overall approach of your research. And then you're going to have these four main features of your research design, which each one of them is distinctly different, but also is used differently. Therefore, the choice of each one of these should be justified why you are choosing that, not that. Okay. So the first one is ontology. Ontology is how you, the researcher, view the world and the assumptions that you make about the nature of the world and its reality. Okay. You have your own views, and your own views always will affect you the way you design your research. It's like a culture where we are coming from.
Mhm.
Each one of us, they have got things we believe in, things that we have been taught that's the right way to do. Therefore, if those things differ with the others, then we think that the others are not doing the right thing. But no, that's right for them.
Mhm.
Okay, only that there are differences. So therefore, you should be able to appreciate their own differences, why they are actually doing what they are doing. And what you need is to understand them before you start criticizing them. Okay. The next design is the epistemology. These are assumptions that you make about the best way of investigating the world and about the reality of the world. Okay, so what your assumptions do you make? Assumptions, there's nothing wrong to do with assumptions because everything that we do is based on assumptions. Otherwise, there's no truthful reality of the world, no concrete things. Okay. Yeah, there are always things that are moving around us. Okay. But we tend to assume that this one is controlled. Therefore, it has no impact on whatever we are doing. Okay.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it makes life much more difficult. They will become much clearer as we go along. Then you have methodology. So the methodology you can see is the way that you group together your research techniques to make a coherent picture. So you can see methodology is the same as research design.
Mhm.
Okay, it's the approach. So approach, design, methodology, they mean exactly the same.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have methods and techniques. Okay. Now these ones, okay, is what you actually do in order to collect your data. So the first is going to be data collection. And there was also what you do to carry out your investigations. Okay. So here, when you talk of methods and techniques, you are talking of methods of sampling. So you have sampling methods. How did you choose the sample from the group or population? So everybody else is called the population. So when you are taking everyone in that particular population, then your study approach is obviously going to be a census. Okay? But normally we take a smaller group of people or a smaller group of whatever we are doing, because if we take a larger one, it's going to be time consuming and it's going to be costly, so very expensive. Okay? Now, these principles will inform which methods you choose. You need to understand how they fit with your bigger picture, with the whole of your design of the world, and how you choose to investigate it to ensure that your work will be coherent and effective. More importantly, it will be believable. Okay? There's no point doing research when the outcome of it, the results you get, no one can believe it.
Mhm.
That is not going to help you at all. Yeah. Okay. It's stuck. It's not printing, is it?
No, it's printing. 30
Ah,
pages, yeah?
yeah.
Make
I
it
think
very
right.
nice color. Because I'll put in the file. I'll punch some holes. I'll put it in the file.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Mhm. Right. Okay. So these ones, I'm not going to spend time because I'm going to read and talk about them. The students tend to write a lot about this, which is not really what is important at all. So here is the summary of what you see. So you have realism, internal realism, relativism, and normalism. Okay, all these are the philosophies, philosophical thinking, okay, of people, because that's where all this comes from. Yeah, I remember when I started this reviewing these, and then I was so absorbed with the how people think. And I remember my supervisor, PhD supervisor, says, "You seem to be completely, yeah, swamped there by this. So, do you want to change your PhD to just to study how people think?" I said, "No, no, no." No, well, I'm already in the third year, so there's no point for me again. Where I'm going to get money from? The people who are sponsoring, they're not going to fund me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So realism is the world is real. So you believe the world is real, and therefore science proceeds by examining and observing it. Okay. So it does exist. There are people who feel that the world is not real. Okay. Internal realism is the world is real, but it is almost impossible to examine it directly. So you have to have indirect way of observing it. So you can see these are just the beliefs of yourself. Okay. And it affects the truth and the facts. Okay. Relativism is the scientific laws are basically created by people to fit their view of reality. So you can see we distort them. Now that's where you find the chemists and the physicists differ.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the physicists, they believe that the things are already there. We are discovering them. We are not creating anything new at all. Okay. There's nothing new that you can create. Everything was already created. But what we are trying to do is to investigate so that we can discover them. So if we say, "Oh, this is a new, I found a new thing," no, it's not a new thing. No, it was there already.
The Livingston discovered in Cooler Falls.
Yes, yeah, no, they haven't discovered Ngula Falls at all. Ngula Falls was already there. So it's not something new. No. Okay. Yeah. So you can see normalism thinks that reality is entirely created by people, and that there's no external truth about it. No, because it's us who creates it. Okay. So you can see it affects the truth. Okay. So where if you are realistic, then you think that there's only one single truth. Okay. There's no alternative at all. But if you have internal realist, then the truth exists, but it is obscure, so you can't see it. So therefore, you need to find a way of finding it, which is why we do the research. Okay. The relativists, they believe that there are many truths, so we should need to find the alternative ones. Okay. So which means that each research you do is going to give you different results. Okay. And then the nominalism, there's no truth at all. So these are people like Trump. Yeah. Okay. It's what we live in. Okay. So let's see. That is going to affect how we view the facts. Okay. If you are realistic, then facts exist and can be revealed through experiments. So most of you can see already, that's the way you're going to design your research. You're going to be looking at conducting experiments and then finding what the findings are. Okay. If you are internal realist, then facts are concrete, but cannot always be revealed. Okay, so you're just discovering a portion of it. So which means we haven't yet finished discovering what is in the real world. Okay. If you are relatives, then the facts depend on the viewpoint of the observer. So obviously that affects the way you interpret the results. So your interpretation is going to be different all the time. Now, I tend to believe that because of the way when I started thinking a lot, is that I'm thinking of the Bible. Okay, why people haven't finished reading the Bible? They can finish big novels. Yeah, but no one has finished reading the Bible. Why? Because each time we are reading it, we are relating it to the problems. So we are relating it to the situation we are in. Therefore, each verse, even if you read it every week, is going to have a different meaning all the time. And so, because you can't interpret why this is happening, you say, "Yeah, this is God speaking to me." So you are always trying to find the justification of what is happening. Yeah, but it's the viewpoint, the way you interpret what is there is actually your viewpoint, and that's why we can't finish reading the Bible, because the Bible is always associated with our problems, with our difficulties, and our problems are always different. Okay? Yeah. And then if you are a nominalist, then facts are all human creations. Okay. So there's no fact anywhere. You are the one creating them. So don't pay much attention to this because they just confuse you. Okay. Yeah. They just confuse you. End up with just be running mad. Yeah. It's the critical debates which most of the time they tend to confuse the students. These all the groups of people, they were had quite a lot of, when you hear of philosophers, the Greek philosophers, is this thinking deep. The more deeper you think, the more you get confused. Okay. Okay. Now, the most important is that none of these are absolutes. Okay, that's why they are in a continuum. They overlap. Okay, so they spread over a length. Okay, so there's no one thing. Pooh, no. Okay, why? These are just debates of thinking, debates of reasoning, and it's healthy for us. Yeah, we are making use of our brain. Okay. Yeah, making use of our brain rather than using it to drink beer. No, at least we are thinking what is good for us. Yeah, but sometimes it can confuse people more. Okay, right. Okay, so epistemology is the way in which you choose to investigate the world. Okay, so too many schools of are positivism and social constructionism. And these are the common things that the students tend to write a lot. Yeah, when you tell them, tell us the theory underpinning your research, they will be writing about the positivism and social constructionism. Now, positivists believe that the best way to investigate the world is through objective methods, such as observations. Okay, the positivism fits with a reality of or realist of ontology, while social constructionists, okay, believe that reality does not exist by itself. Instead, it is constructed and given a meaning by people. Yeah, and that's what we do with the data. That's why there's a difference between data and the findings. Okay, findings have meanings, and who attach those meanings is us who are investigating. Yeah, but the data hasn't got a meaning at all. Yeah, the same with facts. When you look at the when you talk about facts, facts is not data. It's something which you have analyzed it, which means you have changed it, manipulated it. But when you are manipulating in the process, you are biasing because you are manipulating in your own way based on what you are looking for. So you can see if you started debating that way, there's no need to have research. You can't believe anything that the research produces.
Interesting.
Okay, yeah. So there's no vaccine, definitely. Yeah, you have just manipulated in the way you wanted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So these are debates of upwards. So don't worry, they will come back when you probably started studying your PhD, or not now. Yeah, it's just a test of what actually when we talk of uh, difficult, critical debates which tend to confuse people. And these are some of them. Okay. Now, instead, it is constructed and given meaning by people. Their focus is therefore on feelings, okay, the beliefs we have, and the thoughts we have, and how people communicate this. Social constructionism fits better with the relativist ontology. Okay, right? So don't worry about this. No, no, no. That's where we started thinking about it. Yeah, this is your user friendly, okay, which starts coming from you.
Right.
Right. So this is methodology. Okay. So epistemology and ontology will have implications for your methodology. And that's why you need to have those thinkings, okay, because they affect your methodology. Okay. But otherwise, we don't expect you to be writing about those. No. No. Okay. Realists tend to have a positivist approach. So therefore, they tend to gather quantitative sources of data. So you can see. Right. So you're more likely, yeah, to be following quantitative research. Okay. Relativists tend to have a social constructionist approach. So therefore, they tend to gather quantitative sources of data. That's all right here. Okay. So now you can see your type of research and your own thoughts and your own perception, your own beliefs are going to affect the research methodology. Okay. Remember, these are not absolutes, and that's the most important. Okay, people tend to work on a continent; they are over a range. Okay, so therefore, the role for mixed methods and approaches, you find them quite common. There's no way you can collect data which is called conduct research which is purely qualitative or purely quantitative. No, it's always going to have a mixed. You're going to have a mixed quantitative and qualitative, and that's the common. So therefore, it is a relative why you call your research quantitative research, which means there are more quantitative data compared to your qualitative. Okay. Now, when you call it the qualitative, it means there's more qualitative data compared to quantitative. Usually, what I tell students is that the other smaller part is supporting your quantitative, or is supporting your qualitative. Okay. Yeah. Also consider the role of the researcher, as we already talked about. Okay. And what about other internal and external factors that are involved, or how detached are they? there's always going to be influence. Okay, and we make assumptions that those influence don't exist. Okay, right now, as you're sitting there, you are actually assuming that all the other noises are not existing. Therefore, the only noise you're interested in is my noise.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so that will help you to shut off from the others. But the world is always having noise. Cars, whatever. Yeah, that's what happens. Okay. Right. Okay, so we always need to shut off from one thing. Okay. Right. Okay. So let's have a note about the data. So quantitative data is about quantities, and therefore it's going to be numbers. Okay. While quantitative data is about the nature of the thing which you are investigating, and therefore tend to be words rather than numbers. You are describing them. It's more likely to be descriptive. Okay. Rather than 1, 2, 3, 4. If I say, "How are you?" You started saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I said, "No, we need to call 999." Okay, something has gone wrong. Yeah, the wire is in trouble here. I also need to think of the difference between primary and its secondary data sources. Okay, so secondary data sources, the data is already corrected for a different purpose, not for your purpose, no. But you can use it, or which means you need to reinterpret it. That's why data is not information, no, and it's not finding, no. Therefore, you can manipulate it to fit your own needs. Okay. The primary is actually the data you collect for the first time and is specific to your research compared to your secondary data. The only advantage is that the secondary data is actually cheaper and is quicker for you to collect. So your literature review that you were doing for your study is a secondary data. Okay. Now, obviously, you need to reinterpret it to have the findings. Yeah. So when you talk of findings, you realize that in your work you can't see the findings there because you did not reanalyze the data. We didn't see anything that they had actually conducted analysis. The primary data, obviously, is expensive, is time consuming. Okay, but the advantage is that it is very specific. Okay. Now, be aware of research data management practices. Again, these are ethical issues. So, which obviously, if you're going to conduct research, ethical issues are supposed to be there. There's no section which you talked about ethical issues. Now, this is about how you actually store the data, particularly data that is sensitive about people, yeah, and their characteristics, might be their income, might be the whereabouts where they live, yeah, maybe other things they have interested in you. Therefore, we need to anonymize this, okay? And also, we also need to think of confidentiality. So all these are ethical issues. Don't forget, these can damage other people's reputation. Yeah. So you are investigating about the what do we call it? Polygamy, for example. Yeah. You are interviewing men. Definitely, women will be interested in that particular research report. They're not interested in what you found, how many there are. No, they're interested in whether their husband participated in there, so to see whether he's a polygamist or not, because they are always in secret. So you can see if this name is attached to that, it's going to destroy his marriage. The children are going to suffer. Yeah, usually wives, they tend to react. They don't proactively think through what will be the impact of this. No, they are always emotional. Yeah, by the time they realize it's too late, and oh, sorry, I wish I had not left. Yeah, but it's too late. You can't get back. Okay, so obviously there are quite a lot of. It's not only in those social sciences, but also even in business. Yeah, if you take a secret of a company and put it public, and the other companies can copy it, which will bring down the other company. So these are ethical issues which you need to deal with. So protection of data, protection of the individual who participated in your study. Okay. How long are you going to keep this data is particularly important, and how do you make sure that you can dispose them? After how long are you going to dispose it? Okay, because the research data also works as evidence to support you in case you are taken to the court of law. All right. One of the most important studies that happened in the United Kingdom is the MMR vaccine. Okay. Professor Wickfield, who conducted that study, said that actually there's a link between the disease in children called autism and MMR. So MMR is a type of vaccine which is supposed to protect children from measles. So you can see if there was a link, yeah, which means his interpretation of the data was that children who are developing autism is because they had a vaccine, MMR vaccine. Therefore, this was almost at the professor level. You can see how much, and he was a pediatrician, which means he was a very, very renowned person in his field. So what happened? It means the parents started refusing to take their children for MMR vaccine. And a few years later, there was an outbreak of measles in this country. So then the government had to take interest. Yeah, let's see why, because women are refusing to have their children vaccinated. Okay, so therefore they have to take the data which Professor Wickfield actually collected, and they had to repeat exactly the analysis that he did. Okay, and the others were given also the research methodology process, which means they need to conduct their own research and then follow exactly the same things that he followed and try to find out the results. So they had to send one sample to America, one to New Zealand, I think one went to South Africa, the other one went to Italy. Now, all these people, they were professionals in their field. They were pediatricians like him, and also they were researchers. And they come up with a totally different conclusion altogether. The results were totally different. So you can see what happened to Professor Wickfield. Immediately, the government had to terminate his contract. And up to now, they removed the license. It hasn't worked. It's years now have passed. It will never recover again. So this is how dangerous the research work is. Yeah. Okay. So that's because it took years to try to get to convince mothers that there's no link between the MMR and the autism. The recent one is the blood clots of this vaccine. Yeah. Okay. So these blood clots, you can see, they are sort of find it when they were doing the study, the research. They should have been able to have at least maybe one or two cases which would have cautioned them. Yeah, but they never had this. So people don't believe that they never had it. What they believe is that they had it, but they concealed it. Okay, so therefore, what do we need to do? We need to get back into the sample that they took, follow the same methodology, and follow these people that they received, they participated in the study, interview with them, and see whether anybody of them died. And if they died, then what they would have done is obviously to bring their bodies back and then you take the autopsy to check whether it was actually they were killed by the blood clots after the vaccine. Okay. But so far, they have always believed that yes, there's a blood clot which may be, but they don't think it's associated with the vaccine. Therefore, what they have done is to try to look at the ages which were affected and then prevent those ages receiving that vaccine. Okay. And by that time, they have already produced millions of vaccine, which is a lot of money gone. Yeah. Yeah, so research is interesting work. Yeah, time consuming, but it can put you into trouble forever. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is where you start having difficulties. Okay, so choosing your approach. Okay, As we said, when you're choosing your approach, so that's the first thing you need to think about. How am I going to design my research? What approach am I going to take? Okay. Now, there's no right or wrong answer in research. That's the good thing. But you need to justify why you're doing what you're doing. That's all what we need. Okay. The same way results are not very important. It's not always finding positive results. No. Yeah, students have difficulties at the university. Yeah, and they started crying if they can't find the positive results. No, 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 no. Results are least important. Is how did you get those results? And then how do you interpret of no results? Okay, that's what, because research is meant to help you thinking process, and that's what we're interested in. Okay, yeah. So your approach may be influenced by your colleagues' views. Okay, your organization's approach, your supervisor's belief, and probably experience as well, and your own experience. For PhD, you're always influenced by the potential supervisor, okay? Because always you have to indicate what is your area of interest, and that area of interest need to match with your potential supervisor. Otherwise, there's no way they're going to accept you to go there. Okay. As I said, there's no right or wrong answer to choosing your research methods. Whatever approach you choose for your research, you need to consider 5 questions. Okay. These the first 5 questions is what is the unit of analysis that you are going to use? So you can see this is the planning phase. You haven't even started conducting research at all. So when we are talking about a proposal, these are the things we expect you to put in a proposal that you had a chance to think through. Okay. Yeah, for example, are you going to think of a country that's too big? Okay, all right. So probably that may not work. A company, yes, because you can use as a case study. We're going to have individual. Okay. Are you relying on universal theory or local knowledge? Okay. So, for example, will your results be generalizable and produce universally applicable results? Or are there local factors that will affect your results, which means it cannot help make you actually generalize to the rest of the population, of the rest of the country, or the rest of the world? Yeah. So in case, for example, yeah, studying in Mangochi, how many people were involved? We don't know. Yeah, because there are no numbers there. We don't know how many people were involved. Okay, so the smaller it is, you are only studying Mangochi, so the findings in Mangochi might not be applicable to the rest of Malawi, because Malawi is too big. How many districts are there? Yeah, so the size of your sample is going to be 1 out of the total number of districts, and multiplied by 100, it comes a very tiny percentage. Therefore, those results are only viable. Maybe even not only Mangochi, but maybe only to the people that participated in your study. The next third question is, will theory, okay, or data come first? There's a big difference between here. Do you start with this theory, okay, and then continue after that, do your research? So literature review first, okay, or you collect the data first and then develop the theory, okay? Should you read the literature first and then develop your theory? Or will you gather your data and develop your theory from your data, which means from your research results? Okay, so this is a iterative process. What it means is a smaller stage. So you can't do that at one go. No, it's going to take time. Okay, that's what it means there. The fourth question is, will your study be a cross-sectional or is going to be a longitudinal? Okay. For example, are you looking at one point in a time or changes over time? Okay. Now, such studies tend to be probably to do mostly with education. If we're going to study the impact of one teaching method or one lecturing method, we tend to have a longitudinal. Okay. in a sense, because it takes time for people to acquire knowledge and develop the competence and skills they need to study better as a result of your intervention, which is your education. Therefore, it's going to be over a period of time that is longitudinal. So, first year, and then second year, then third year, and then fourth year, then fifth year. Okay. But if we just wanted to see, okay, there is a program there which is new, they implemented it 2 years ago. Okay, we just need to find out whether it has made a big impact or not. So we just need to get one data for that specific period of time. Okay, right? Or we're going to take a number of those schools who are engaged in that particular program versus those who are not engaged in that particular program. So that's a cross section of the participants. Okay. The last one, will you verify or falsify a theory? This is quite difficult at your level at the moment. So it's something probably when you start doing your, not even masters, your PhD, you may have to think. There are these views which are not easy sometimes to understand. You cannot conclusively prove any theory. Okay, the best that you can do is to find nothing that disproves it. Okay, so you can work from that side rather than instead of proving. Proving a theory might be completely difficult. So what do you do? You're trying to see if there's anything that might disprove that theory. Therefore, the task becomes easier because you just need to find just one wrong answer. That's all. Yeah. Now, these will become much more clear when we talk about H1, H0 and H1 hypothesis testing. Okay, which probably it might be new ideas in your head, but that's mostly what we do. Okay, so when we start looking at hypothesis. Right. Okay. So let's look at the quantitative approaches. What are these quantitative approaches? Okay. So here we are trying to explain what we are studying by collecting and analyzing numerical data. Okay. So the phenomena is just what we are trying to study. Yeah. So we want to explain that. That's all idea behind it. That's why we tend to have research questions. Why does this happen? Why does it happen the way it happens? Okay. And as we heard, obviously, it's already happening. Okay. All we need is to find the reasons why it is doing it the way it is doing. So there's nothing new there. It's already existed. Yeah, this tells you if there is a difference. That's the most important in the quantitative study. All the data analysis softwares and tools, they measure the difference. Okay. So either it's the difference between those who participated in the study and those who didn't, which we call them control group, or the difference between the time. So the time they did not participate in the study to the time they did participate in the study. Yeah. So all the quantitative measures always they are looking at the difference. That's why we tend to say what is the statistical significance differences between the results you got. If the results are significant, then you are measuring p-value. So the p-value is going to be less than 0.05, which means the results are significant. In a sense, they are not happening because of chance. No, they are happening because of your intervention. Yeah, so for example, if we start tomorrow, let's say we want to tutor all your students this research methods topic. Okay. Now, after 3 months or after 6 months, and then we are going to collect the data, okay, or interviewing the participants, how they feel, or we can take their work and see how whether they have changed the way they are presenting their work or their writing shows that they have better understanding than before they joined. So they understand the research methodology, they are able to apply it. Okay. What we wanted to know is what was the difference, okay, in their score. So we're going to give them the scores. So going to, what is the difference between the time they had no these tutorials and after these tutorials? So their scores should be different. Okay, what we expect. So remember, we are already anticipating what we can get. Okay, so what we are anticipating that after these tutorials, definitely students should improve. So therefore, their scores are going to be higher. Right. So then we're coming back. What is our assumption? So we are assuming the assumption we're talking about noises all over again. Yeah. But here we are talking about where else can they get knowledge apart from these tutorials? Okay. Now, obviously, they read books. They can interact with the other colleagues, okay, who actually may be coming from another school, not necessarily because of this research, okay. But what we assumption we make is that all these, okay, they do not exist. Another assumption is that also, as you grow, you tend to be very inquisitive and you tend to be mature, so you tend to retain things, right? So now all these might affect our results. So therefore, what we want to know is that the results are not by chance. Okay, so that's what we want to know. So therefore, to test that the results are not are normal in a sense, because you can be exposed to other sources of knowledge, or as a result of you maturing. Yeah, that's why we need to find how significant this difference in the scores is. Okay, which means the scores is related to the level of improvement in how you do your research work after these tutorials. Okay, right. So as I said, the the p value is actually the measure for statistical significance different. Okay, if it's not significant, which means if it's greater than 0.05, it means that the results are not significant. Therefore, what it means is that this tutorial does not make any difference. It doesn't help students, yeah, to acquire competencies and knowledge they need in order to improve in their research work. Okay, so what do? We develop the hypothesis. Okay, so the hypothesis, the first one is the narrow hypothesis, which is H0. We put H0. So narrow hypothesis here is that these tutorials do not make any difference in terms of improving students' knowledge, competence, and skills to conduct research. That's H0. So that's the way things are. The second one is H1. So H1, okay, which is alternative hypothesis, is that this tutorial will improve the knowledge, understanding, skills, and competences that the students who are exposed to it are going to show after they have been exposed, when writing their research or when conducting their research. Right. So you can see what we are testing is not H0. No. What we are testing is H1. Okay. So sometimes you hear is a research hypothesis or a research question. And this is how you develop. So in your case, you are trying to see whether what do you call it? Social what? What is it? What were you trying to do in your research? Social
Justice.
is it a scripture, something social? What is scripture?
Oh, social justice, yeah.
Yeah.
To what extent can social justice scriptures and social culture drivers help to alleviate poverty?
Mm-hmm. Right. So your H0 would have been, yeah, that cannot. Okay. Yeah, so that will be H0. That cannot help. The H1 in there, it can make a difference. But obviously, you have no way of testing. That's why your supervisor say, "Well, this is nice." Yeah,
Mm.
because in yours, if you did it properly, you could actually be able to publish that paper. Yes, it is something which is important to the society, not only for Malawi, but the rest of Southern Africa.
Mm.
So you may have to rethink probably if you can sell it. What you can do is write another proposal and sell it, and then you get funding and do it properly. Okay,
Mm.
yeah, because that's what you would have tested. But you can see, in order for you to do that, you needed to expose the people, yeah, to social justice scriptures.
Mm.
Okay, so which means you should have a control. You're going to compare those who have been exposed and those who haven't been exposed. Is there any difference after a number of years or a number of months? Okay, then we're going to test the statistical significance of your results. If you can do that, then you can publish your work. Yeah, and it will be easier for you to get a job because we can see what difference you can make to the world. Okay. Yeah, very, very interesting things, but obviously you tend to be messed up because all they are teaching you is more to do with you getting marks that are not going to help you to
Oh.
get a job or to get anything. Yeah, because in an interview you can't answer the questions. You'll be flopping. Okay,
Mm.
so the variables are controlled. Okay, these are the assumptions we're talking about. So the assumptions in particular research, we tend to control the variables. Okay. So therefore, we need to have randomized control, okay, randomized control data, right? So which means when we pick the sample, we need to pick a sample randomly, okay, which means there's no bias, right? So how did you choose the mangochi? Okay, yeah, you can see what you need to do is take all names of all the districts, give them numbers, okay, and then put them in a hat. You can check and then pick while your eyes closed, and you check again, pick until you get the size of the number of districts you want. Or you can put the names and they generate the numbers on a computer. Computer can generate random numbers, and then you generate the sample from that random. Okay, very, very, very easy. But all these little things, but they give you a lot of marks because we can see exactly what you're doing. So why do we do this random? Because we can eliminate the interference of all the other things I've talked about, and also measuring the effect of any change. Okay. Now, so randomization to reduce the subject bias is really very important in quantitative research. If there are no numbers involved, it's not quantitative. No, then it becomes qualitative research. Some types of research lend themselves better, okay, to quantitative approaches than others. So there are those which you may not be able to study by actually using quantitative. But what we know is going to be easy because the quantitative, even when you're talking about the sample size, we're talking of numbers. Yeah, there's no way we can describe the sample size without numbers. Okay, it's the magnitude. Okay, so therefore, but much of your researches may be more qualitative than quantitative, which means it's only those sample descriptives that are going to appear as quantitative. The rest, no. So that's the way you look at it. Okay, right. So data sources for quantitative study. Okay, the first one is surveys where there are large number of respondents, especially where you have use a Likert scale. So Likert scale is strongly, I believe, yeah, not believable, yeah, or true, false, yeah. Yeah, so those are Likert scale to go over range. So we put numbers to them. Okay.
Mm.
Tell us if you are satisfied or highly satisfied, okay,
Mm.
or dissatisfied. Those are Likert scale.
Oh, range between 1 to 10. How
Yeah,
like? Yeah.
how likely you are. Yeah. Okay. You can also do observations. So you want to study how many red cars passes through near your house every 1 hour. What you need to do is go to the on the road. Yeah, so you sit by the side of the road and you record the number of red cars. So each red car passes one, yeah, two, okay, three, okay. All right. So counts of numbers or coding data into numbers. So you can take qualitative data and then code it. If you code it, you're converting it from qualitative to quantitative. Also, you may actually the other source is secondary data. Okay, so this is more to do with the government data, particularly statistics. Yeah, so different scores. Government always collects a lot of different types of data through National Statistical Office, which is funded by the government. So almost every country has got that. And then also you need to look at analysis techniques. Okay, so including testing hypothesis, looking at correlations. Correlations, you are looking at relationship. Okay, not causes. No, there's just a relationship between this and that. And then you may have cluster analysis, which more to do with the natural way we are grouped ourselves. Okay, it can be in a form of, for example, the natural one, rural, urban. We are grouped; those are clusters. So cluster for rural, cluster for urban. Or within the village, for example, you're going to have some who are in the south, others who are in the center, others who are in the north, east. Yeah. So some of these natural clusters we can do that. Okay. Right. Research is interesting. Okay. Right. Here we are. Yeah. So these are people we call. You can see. Yeah. People are intelligent. Always they have got a big head. You see. Yeah. they, they spend time of thinking and then the brain is closed.
It's 5 minutes.
Okay. So here he talks about the black swan. Oh, time goes faster. Right. Okay. So what did you want to do? We'll stop after this 5 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah, and then we can do another next week.
Okay.
We go.
Yeah. Then talks about the black swans and the falsifiability, okay, which means the refutability of the statement, okay, or refutability of a hypothesis or the theory, okay. He said it is in the inherent possibility that it can be proven false. So he says proving false is much easier. Okay, that's what the core purpose was saying. Okay, so rather than trying to prove that the theory is correct. Okay, because if you're going to prove false, you just need one single data. Very difficult idea to understand. Okay, if I want to prove that this is true, I need a lot. But if I want to prove that this is false, I only need one error, just one mistake. If I can find just one mistake, yeah, there were millions who received the vaccine.
Yes.
They only received 17. Exactly. Yeah, so only 17. Only 17.
Loopholes.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you see, this 17 made the whole vaccine to be stopped being given to
Yes.
me. You see what I mean? Yeah, yet they have spent already millions of pounds.
Yeah.
So that's what the Papa was trying to say. It's easier to falsify than to prove. Yeah, that obviously something is correct. Okay. Right, so this involves the hypothesis testing. Says start with a null hypothesis, I said. So H0, that there will be no difference. Okay. The next thing is that there's a difference. Okay. So there's no difference between those people who received this vaccine, yeah, and those who didn't, as far as the blood clots is concerned. That's why the first thing they think it probably was not caused by this vaccine. It must have been already there in the system. Okay. Right. Okay. So we'll stop there. Yeah. So we'll pick up from there.